I'm Mr. Squeegee and welcome you to another episode of Whether or Not. As always, it's being brought to you on behalf of WindowCleaningResource.com. Today I want to talk about a subject that we take time to talk about in each of our series, and that's fabricating debris. But today we're going to talk about it a little bit differently because you've heard me discuss in the past what it is, the dangers, the need to use a scraper in certain conditions. We have a lot of first-time customers. Those windows have been neglected for years. When we come in, if we're going to get them clean, we need to use a scraper. But a lot of guys will tell you that they use alternative methods because their customers don't want to sign a waiver. And that's fine. You're free to use whatever method you'd like to. But be aware that when you're using chemicals, there are certain things to take into account. You need to use proper personal protective equipment, or PPE as we call it in the industry. Make sure you're wearing gloves, that you're aware of rinsing and diluting down those chemicals from the frames, that the runoff from those chemicals could stain stucco or EFIS, the synthetic stucco. That's a real danger there because that stuff is very sensitive to chemicals, so you want to be real careful when you're dealing with that synthetic stucco. And also be aware that ideally, if you're going to go that route, there is a waiver you're still going to need to get. A lot of those chemicals can be harsh at times. If, for instance, on a unit, that chemical were to get past the seal, whether it be wood, vinyl, or aluminum, whatever that is, if it somehow managed to sit there long enough, you get distracted, you put too much chemical on, any number of things can happen. It can leach back behind here, and it can set down in the frame. And the longer it sits down in there, the stronger the possibilities that chemical can break down the butyl seal that connects the two pieces of glass that make up an insulated glass unit. Once that seal is compromised, the argon gas in here gets out, air, moisture get in, and you end up with a foggy window. So if you're going to use an alternative method, at least get a waiver to protect you, that the customer is aware that this is a potential hazard. So just like my waiver makes them aware of a potential hazard in this glass, you probably need a waiver to protect yourself from the other possibility. And again, as far as fabricating debris is concerned, we're talking about just tempered or heat strengthened glass is the only places it's going to be. So that's the only issue you're going to have. A lot of the homes that we go into, sometimes upwards of a third of the windows are tempered, but most of them are just plain annealed glass. So we're only dealing with a small minority of windows when we're dealing with fabricating debris. If you use alternatives and don't use a scraper, you're going to use those chemicals on probably every window in the house, at least on the outside if it's bad. So your potential to cause a failure is greater than the potential to have some scratches on a defective piece of glass. So this is some things to be aware of, things to protect yourself from. As always, we don't want any of these things to take us out of business because we've got to support our family. So be aware of that. Go get an education about what fabricating debris is, where you're likely to run into it. And we tell our customers the waiver's there because I can't test that glass. No window cleaner can test the glass. By the time we get to the glass, it's trash. So the manufacturer, the supplier, the builder, they're in far better position to test glass than we ever will be. And that's where it really should be done. So don't promise your customer you're going to test the glass in an inconspicuous corner. Because if it's fabricating debris, there can be nothing here and a whole lot here. It just depends on how it goes through the furnace, where it contacts rollers, where the last piece of broken, shattered glass happened to be in that furnace and that they didn't clean up. So you just can never tell. It's not evenly coated most of the time. So be aware of that as well and protect yourself. So just another episode of Whether or Not, telling you to be careful out there, protect yourself in all cases. I hope you've enjoyed it. Again, I'm Mr. Squeegee. And on behalf of WindowCleaningResource.com, I want to thank you.